Multiplying monomials. What does the prefix mono mean? That's just one. So when you're multiplying monomials, it just means that you're multiplying expressions together that only have one term in them. Before we move on, let's look at some examples of expressions and decide whether or not they are monomials. If you look at the 6 of these expressions, what we're checking for is whether or not there is a plus or a minus sign that is separating our terms together. And if I look at all 6 of these, I see that I have 2 examples that have either a plus sign or a minus sign in them. So when I look at these, I can tell that 2x cubed and 5 are both being added together. They're being separated by a plus sign. So this is not considered a monomial. Then I have x minus 5 over there in the right column. The x and the 5 are being separated by a minus sign, so those are not monomials. But the remaining 4 examples are considered monomials. 3x to the 4th power. There is no plus or minus sign that is separating any terms from one another, so that's a monomial. -4 is just a single number value, so that's definitely a monomial. xy squared, even though there are 2 variables in this expression, they're not being added or subtracted from each other, so this is considered a monomial, as is 8mn. All right, so those are examples of monomials and not monomials. Now let's very quickly go over some exponent rules just to remind ourselves of what this means. If I have x to the 3rd power, the exponent, this 3, just represents the number of times I'm multiplying the variable times itself. X to the 3rd power is just x times x times x. If I have x squared, that's just x times x. So what do I do if I am multiplying these 2 variable expressions together? What if I have x cubed times x squared? That is going to be the same thing as saying x times x times x, and then of course times x again. How many x values do we have here all together? 1, 2, 3. Oops, that didn't quite make it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So x to the 3rd power times x squared is just x to the 5th power. That's your little exponent reminder. All right, so let's look at 3x times 4x. We're just going to multiply together our coefficients. 3 times 4 gives us 12, and then we have x times x. Remember, each of these has an understood 1 as an exponent, and so when you add those together, x times x, that gives us x squared, just like we did in our example up here. All we had to do was add our 2 exponents together to get the final exponent. So let's look at another example. 2x times 5x squared. 2 times 5 gives us 10, and then we have x times x squared. Our first x variable is just to the 1st power, so this ends up giving us x raised to the 1 plus 2 power, which of course just gives us our final answer of 10x to the 3rd. 10x to the 3rd power. Let's look at another example. 4x times 3. Here we have 2 number values and only 1 variable. So when I multiply together my 4 times 3, that's easy. I've already got 12, and then I just got 1x left over. So 12x. Then let's look at this one. 9y squared times 8y to the 3rd power. We have 9 times 8, which gives us 72. And then we have our y squared times y to the 3rd power. Remember, all we need to do is add our 2 exponents together. So our y term is going to be y raised to the 2 plus 3 power, which is just y to the 5th power. Okay, 2 more examples. We've got 5xy squared times 3x squared y to the 3rd power. Our number values, our coefficients, are 5 times 3, which gives us 15. And when I multiply our x terms together, this is x times x squared. Well, our first variable x has an understood 1 as its exponent. So x to the 1st times x squared gives us x to the 3rd power. And then we have our y squared times y cubed. That gives us y to the 5th power. And then our last example, we have right here our understood 1 coefficient in front of our x term because we don't see a number value there, times our 8. 1 times 8 just gives us 8. And then we have x times x squared. Remember our first variable, or excuse me, our first exponent is a 1. So x times x squared just gives us x cubed. And then we have y to the 5th times y. This understood exponent of 1 right here gives us y to the 6th power.